I'll be talking about Psalm 66 today. The part that really grabbed me was verses 10 through 12. For you, God, tested us. You refined us like silver. You brought us into prison and laid burdens on our backs. You let people ride over our heads. We went through fire and water, but you brought us to a place of abundance. Wow, brought us into prison? That's hardcore, and it's basically the story of my life. I don't have enough time to get into all the details of my life, nor do you care to hear it all. But it is safe to say my childhood was far from perfect. My parents were young and ill-equipped at the time, having come from broken homes themselves. Alcoholism was in both of their homes growing up. They meant well, and I know they loved me, but they divorced when I was 3 years old. I was the only child, being bounced back and forth between babysitters and then a latchkey kid. This left me at the end of adolescence with a pretty low opinion of myself and a nearly empty toolbox of coping skills to go through life. Throughout high school and community college, I constantly wondered why I was so shy and didn't have the confidence to assert myself and speak up. I was a bright young man, but didn't have much confidence at all. I felt like something was holding me back. But one bright spot in my childhood and my teenage years was the sport of motocross. When I was 15 years old, I started racing on weekends at the local track with my dad. I quickly fell in love with it, and what started as a weekend hobby quickly became a passion. It taught me resilience and to not give up. It was also a great time for my dad and I to bond and be together. This sport would take us up and down the East Coast, and when I was 19 years old, out to Tennessee for the Amateur Nationals, where I placed 10th in the nation. This out of thousands who tried to qualify. What a feeling. I loved winning. This chasing glory seemed so much fun at the time, but when I caught it, I would always want more. It was never enough. No matter what, there's always somebody faster than you. I had a group of buddies who I raced with and lived nearby, who introduced me to alcohol and cigarettes. Young people, friends, family, pick your friends wisely. Proverbs 13, verse 20, one who walks with wise people will be wise, but a companion of fools will suffer harm. Let me demonstrate, because in hindsight, it was right here that I took a wrong turn in life. It started off as just having fun on Friday nights around a bonfire, but progressed to something that took my attention from racing, then add girls and parties to the mix. Now that was something worth chasing. Motocross? What motocross? This new pastime offered a more instant gratification. No working or training necessary. And this alcohol stuff, it seemed great. It filled every void in my personality. This liquid courage seemed to fix everything. I thought I was the life of the party, and everything was a reason for a party now. Birthdays, holidays, Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, you get the picture. This never-ending quest to find an occasion to drink got very exhausting, though, to the point where I just gave in and started drinking every night at home. I mean, there's rarely a party on Tuesday or Wednesday nights. But my addiction was growing. This was a slippery slope I didn't even know that I was on. I became hooked. This would happen over a course of years, but eventually I would have to drink just to feel normal. Soon the buddies I drank with all went off to college. I got accepted to a local private university on the condition that I receive a satisfactory grade in a statistics class. I, of course, goofed off all summer and drank too much and got a 69 in the class. The college did not accept me. This was a big turning point in my life. I stayed put at home, got a job on a horse farm cutting grass while all my other friends went off to college. I continued to drink heavily. The owner of the farm was an alcoholic as well, so it seemed like an ideal situation for me to move on to the farm. Out of the pot into the fire. It was basically an alcoholic's paradise. One could drink every night, report to work whenever I felt like it, and the boss was never mad. I quickly rose to become the full-time caretaker of the farm, and I did learn a lot of valuable skills on the farm. Even at the peak of my drinking, I woke up and went to work and got work done. I never drank during the day, not until the work was done. But year after year went by, working on the farm at low wages and watching my friends excel in college, then move into successful careers. What I was seeing in the mirror didn't look too good. So I began doing side work as a carpenter and plowing snow for additional income. Soon I had 40 to 50 hours a week of work at twice the wage I was making on the farm. The money started to roll in, but like drinking, the more I made, the more I wanted, and just like winning, I could never get enough. During this time, I had a couple of significant relationships, but my drinking prevented me from having anything close to a healthy relationship. When the first one ended, it was just replaced by one even worse. In my misery, I used alcohol to escape, but the next morning, the problems were still there on top of another hangover. The second of the two relationships ended with a lot of drama. It was a long, drawn-out mess. This hit me particularly hard. It was winter, so I was already in a gloomy mood. What did I do to cope? Drank more. This sent me into a downward tailspin of heavy drinking and self-loathing like I'd never experienced. It was horrible. And the drinking didn't make it any better now. It made it worse. I was in a bad place. I was in a dark place, a pit of despair. One morning I woke up on the sofa where I had passed out the night before. I opened my eyes and all the beer cans on the table in front of me looked like shotgun barrels, pointing at me. That was it. That was the obvious solution. Screw it. I had a gun safe in the next room full of guns. So I walked to the safe and I stared at it for a couple of minutes. I thought about how and where. 12 gauge in the mouth, that'll do it. My friends, there's nothing more humbling than realizing your way has failed so miserably that the only way out was this. And nothing scarier than realizing the monster that was going to kill you was you. But something happened. I decided to wait. This thing would be much easier to do drunk. And who knows, maybe a miracle will happen between now and then. So I walked away. I went to work. I got in the truck and headed to the job site. I stopped at the intersection of 214 and Church Road. Going straight was the job site, and going to the right was my mother's house. Looking back, I was literally at a crossroads in life. Keep going the same way or change. Sitting at the red light, I started to cry uncontrollably, and I turned the truck to the right. As my mother opened the door to her crying 28-year-old son, she did what a good mom would do. She gave me a hug and brought me in, let me lie on the sofa and cry and tell my story. She brought me a cold washcloth and an ear to listen. It was over. My way was a horrible failure. A decade of drinking. I was at the end of my rope. I'd given up. I remember praying a lot that morning. I asked God to free me from this prison of hell I was in. This was my rock bottom. In the most beat down, defeated place that I've ever been in my life, I cried to God, help. Help. I didn't know what the solution was. I just needed help. And my friends, that's when Jesus left the 99. Because as I rested there on the sofa, the most inconvenient thing started to happen. It started to snow. And as I mentioned earlier, I had snow removal contracts. I had 23 of them. And I was like, are you kidding me? Here I can't even have a nervous breakdown in peace. And it starts snowing harder and harder. And the phone starts ringing with complaints. And I'm like, dang it, I got to go to work. This sucks. So I give my mom a hug and a kiss. I assure her I'd be okay. Then I left. But something very extraordinary started to happen as I got going. I started to feel better. A lot better. All my worries, anxiety, fear, jealousy, pride, they vanished. I felt like 100% at peace, like 100%. I didn't care about anything, nothing, not in a bad way, like in a biblical way. Like when Jesus says, don't worry about tomorrow, tomorrow will worry about itself. The thoughts that of the girl that just left me, gone. And as I proceeded to knock out my snow contracts one after the other, I loved everybody I met that day. Like the guy at the drive-thru, the guy at the gas station. I loved people. My helper and I, we laughed and had a great time in what is usually a pretty stressful environment. I was in awe at what was happening. It truly was supernatural. The snow stopped, leaving a good 8 inches on the ground, requiring us to shovel all the sidewalks and plow all the lots. My helper had to leave at midnight. This workload would normally require 2 trucks and 4 guys all night. It was just me and my truck. I didn't care. I didn't worry. I remained in the best mood of my life, and I diligently went about clearing all the lots. I finished 100% of the contracts at 5 a.m. the next morning. That was impossible. My body was tired, but by now I knew I was being carried by Him, by God. Like the footprints in the sand poem, I was being carried. This was not of my strength. It was like I was flying on the back of an angel, and God was saying, "Look around, John. This is what it could be like." Right before dawn, I pulled into my driveway. The feeling of a job well done was on me. As I ascended the snow-covered steps of my apartment and reached for the doorknob, the sun shone on my face like a warm kiss. I pushed the door open and entered, only to see all those beer cans still sitting on the table. And in that moment, I realized God had just saved my life. He did not let me come home. He kept me working all night long. He made it snow just for me, I'm sure of it. He did not let me come home to that lonely apartment and finish my plans. As I looked at those cans 24 hours later, everything was different now. It was as if a month had passed. Looking back, I did in a sense die that day. I got up off my mother's sofa, a hollow shell, and God filled me. I proceeded to clean up those cans, then continued on to my life. I stopped drinking that day, but my path to sobriety wasn't without stumbling. I relapsed a few times, but there was only one choice now: get back on that horse. And once I committed to quit drinking and step out of my comfort zone, and that was key. We all have these comfort zones. We build walls of comfort around ourselves. And, once you start stepping across those boundaries, that's where God started blessing me in a big way. I moved off that farm. I bought a fixer-upper home. It turned out to be an incredible investment. I went back to college. I took classes in architecture and blueprint writing. I made the dean's list. I got my Maryland Home Improvements contractor's license. I started my own home improvement company. When my friends invited me out to drink, I stayed home and worked on that house. I remodeled it into a masterpiece. I made new sober friends, one of which asked me if I wanted to proclaim Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior, while we sat in his kitchen one evening, and that I did. One day at a time, I rebuilt my life with the help and guidance of an incredible mentor. Things were going great, but something was missing. Someone was missing. I was lonely. My high school sweetheart, Carolyn, had given up on me a decade ago. She went off to college and made something of herself. She had gotten a master's degree in biotechnology and a great job working for a government contractor. She bought her own house. I'd always regretted messing that relationship up. She always had a special place in my heart. Man, I wanted her back. But there was one problem. She was engaged to get married. My employee at the time, Eric, was good friends with Carolyn's fiance. He would always give me the inside scoop. He was like my spy. He told me their relationship wasn't going too good, but it seemed she was going to go through with it anyway. The ceremony was scheduled to take place October 2003 at Steamboat Landing Restaurant in Galesville, Maryland. Well, God had another plan. In September 2003, a Category 5 hurricane named Isabel formed in the Atlantic Ocean, and for days her path was unsure. But on September 19th, Isabel ran right up the Chesapeake Bay. The subsequent flooding was devastating, and her wedding venue was wiped out. The wedding had to be canceled. Oh, it gets better. You see, the same storm flooded all the houses across the street from my house. That's not good. but the floodwaters stopped at my driveway. When the waters rescinded days later and all the insurance companies were out assessing the damage, I simply walked across the street with my freshly acquired contractor's license and collected more business than I ever had in my life. The prices were set extra high by the insurance companies. A storm that wreaked havoc on so many and caused billions of dollars of damage for others was no doubt one of the best blessings that ever happened to me. You can't make this stuff up. As for Carolyn, she never rescheduled that wedding. However, last month we celebrated our 18th wedding anniversary. And 1 week later, I celebrated 20 years of sobriety. Thank you. We now have 2 beautiful daughters. When our second daughter was born, I decided my family needed to be in church. 12 years ago, God led us through the front doors of Chesapeake Church. And 3 years ago, my whole family was baptized right there. That's abundance. Chesapeake Church has become the biblical family, the brothers and sisters that I never had growing up. And now through Chesapeake Care's food pantry and Honduras Compassion Partners, I have discovered how incredibly rewarding it is to give my time, talents, and treasure to those so desperately in need. This gives me the feeling of being on the back of that angel. And that's the abundance of Psalm 66. 2 acts of God. The first one saved me from my self-made hell. The second brought me abundance. When I quit drinking, that farm that was a prison to me, that I had to get away from, became a place of abundance for my family and I when I later became the owner. I still do not know why I'm so blessed. But back then, I didn't know why I was so cursed. But when the storms hit, I got to work, and that's really where the blessings were. I've had a unique life. I've chased happiness in so many forms: glory, alcohol, drugs, sex, materialism, and money. All those things are costly dead-end roads, and none bring the pure joy of simply doing what God commands us, to love Him with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself. That is a place of abundance. And I do know that God wants me to tell this story. Nothing I have is because of me. It's all from Him. When I needed Him the most, He was there. He is still answering that prayer I prayed all those years ago. Father God, I love you so, so much, and thank you for your blessings over me. And Chesapeake, thank you all for listening. I love you too.